Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. We'll get started in just a moment. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Pre-Sales Collective webinar series. Today's topic is pre-sales across the organization, how to be effective with various internal teams. Before we get started today, we'll do a quick icebreaker. We're going to check out using a tool called Slido. And you can join the icebreaker by either going to slido.com and entering the event code and passcode, or you can go into the QR code to join. So today, for our icebreaker, share with us your best road story. So before we were all working from home, what's your best road story? Tell us something funny, wild, or interesting that happened while you were on an in-person sales call. All right, so we've got a couple stories coming in. A trip to Japan and getting to experience Japanese culture for a couple of weeks. That sounds amazing. I can't wait to do those kinds of trips again. No Wi-Fi and we all had to whiteboard from memory. That, that we've all been there, right? We have those technical challenges. Showed up at a federal government facility that required passports for foreign nationals. With my Australian colleague, he had to wait in the lobby. Oh my goodness. I had that happen where I was at a federal government facility and they actually detained my distinguished guest because he was a foreign national. That's a painful experience. Certainly, I know that everyone is slowly getting back together. I know the Pre-Sales Collective had a great meetup last night in London. For our colleagues in London, I hope you were able to join and stay tuned for a Pre-Sales Collective meetup near you. Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, I'll keep that up if anyone else would like to keep adding in their great road stories. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's dive in. We've got a great panel discussion for you today. I'm so excited that you've joined us. Thank you for being a part of the Pre-Sales Collective. I appreciate each and every one of you for your contributions and for your time. I'd also like to thank our panelists for joining us today, and we'll meet them in just a moment. How you can get the most out of today's webinar is by asking questions in the Q&A window in Zoom and being active in the Zoom chat as well. So let's do a quick poll here. Which option best describes your current role? Okay, awesome. Awesome, very excited. Okay, so let's take a look at who's with us today. We've got a variety of roles in the audience today. And for those of you that are interested in pre-sales, welcome. It's a fantastic career and we're so excited you're here to learn with us to learn more. Fantastic, okay. So let's go ahead and meet our panelists today. Brandon, let's start with you.
Hi everyone, my name's Brandon Ambrose Brunskill and I'm a Global Solutions Consultant Manager at Refinitiv, primarily in our enterprise risk management technology, essentially GRC technology. And I've been in this role for a couple of years now, with another few years in pre-sales before that and professional services for a number of years before that as well.
Fantastic. Welcome, Brandon. Melissa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Gavruli. I am a solutions consultant at InMoment. I've been in the pre-sales CX space for the last, just about 6 years. I call myself an SC boomerang. I started at Oracle as an SC. I went to the success side actually at Sprinklr, and then I'm back on the SC side here at InMoment. My husband and I just made a big move from Chicago out to California. I say just, but we're about to celebrate our 1-year anniversary out here. So hello to the West Coast folks if you're out here. What else? I currently focus on the strategic accounts at InMoment. So I'm supporting our global strategic accounts team.
Awesome. Welcome, Melissa. And have you unpacked all your boxes yet in your new house?
We have settled and unpacked, but we actually are moving again in a month. So we'll be packing again. If anyone needs help with that too, that's my side hustle.
Well, thanks, Melissa. And Trey.
Hi, everyone. I'm Trey Watson. I'm Senior Vice President of Sales Engineering and Professional Services at Sangoma. I manage a smaller team of directors, and about my org's about 35 people altogether. And I've been in sales engineering, professional services role, and in leadership for about 20 years. Located in Sarasota, Florida.
Oh, beautiful. Lovely. I miss those palm trees. All right. Well, welcome, Trey. Thank you so much. I'm Wendy McHenry, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's session. I'm a Senior SC Effectiveness Manager at Pega. My 26-year career has spanned analytics to consulting to pre-sales, and I've spent the last 10 years in pre-sales. So I'm very excited to be with you today. So let's dive into the discussion today. Okay, so let's start with which teams are pre-sales members most likely to interact with? Are there others we should interact with, but we typically don't? Melissa, let's start with you.
Sure, absolutely. So kind of going back to my SC boomerang perspective, I joke that there's this triangle, right? We need to have our sales leaders partnered with our SC team, but also the success side of the house, right? That is my trifecta. I think that's the first relationships that I really lean into and try to build, because it's from the pre-sale side. I really want to know what's going on with our current accounts, how they're using our tools, what are some of the pain points that we're overcoming or solving for to help them position either growth opportunities within the existing accounts or net new, maybe similar people in the industry that we're targeting and going after. So the trifecta is really my first kind of focus, partnering with different teams. I also encourage my team to reach out to implementation and maybe the services side of the house. Again, it's really important to understand the nuances of once the sale happens, when we hand it over, what's next, right? And so you can be more consultative in the pre-sales process and thoughtful how you're designing the solution, what's going to look like when you hand it off. There's so much insight and knowledge that you can gain from that team. So that's where my head starts.
I think that's great. And I love the call out to the relationship with the implementation side of the house. And Trey, what about for you?
I would completely second what Melissa said. We spend a lot of time interfacing with development organization and product management, giving that feedback to them. But I teach my team the 3 Ds, discover, design, deliver. And that design piece is absolutely critical, especially for us, because we operate primarily in an indirect channel. So for us, that implementation piece is really making sure that our channel partners are happy, but that interface and that relationship is the single most critical thing, because sales engineering touches everything.
I absolutely agree. That's great. And Brandon, what do you think?
Yeah, I think both Trey and Melissa hit it spot on there. For me, I think the absolute key one is the product, right? In my mind, what pre-sales has over every other element in the organization is we see the deals that we lose ultimately. And by seeing the deals that we lose, we know where our weaknesses is within the product. So being able to have that feedback loop to the product team is absolutely critical for the long-term success of the organization.
That's a big one, Brandon. Thank you for adding that, because I feel like that was a miss. So
Yeah, that product feedback is so important. I mean, they can't succeed without us.
yeah.
That's a key role of sales engineering.
Yeah. I don't know about you all, but we have a lead on our team that has a standing meeting with our product team. And so we'll huddle as the SC team globally and talk about feedback that we're hearing, things that we're experiencing, and even in our demo orgs, right? Because oftentimes we're first to test things too. So having that standing cadence to understand what's on the roadmap, what's coming, but also what are enhancements or things like that we're running into. So yeah, great call out, Brandon.
Well, actually, let's talk more about that. What are some ways that pre-sales can get that feedback back to product?
Yeah, I think
It's a lot on, go ahead, Brandon.
I was going to say, I think in my mind, Melissa, your team does exactly what my team does as well. We have sort of a product committee, and we make sure that we have representation within that, both from a full-on development aspect of it, but also from sort of solutionizing the system that we have as well. So not only having new features and enhancements in there, but also seeing what the best practices are within the products we offer to market as well.
And
So-
Trey, go ahead.
We take a little bit of a different approach to that. So rather than kind of a product committee, one of the opportunities that I give to our sales engineer, product management is a typical career path for sales engineering. So one of the opportunities that we provide to our SEs is what we call a subject matter expert. So they actually sit and engage directly with product management. So it's kind of that committee concept. They take all the feedback and then they're responsible for feeding that back to the product management team to make sure that, you know, features, benefits, those types of things that our customers are talking to us about. You know, Brandon, like you said, the reason we lose opportunities, because that's really what it's all about. That's how we manage that feedback loop in a smooth way.
And Melissa, what about for you?
Yeah. So similar to Trey, I have seen in my past having those SMEs that are product experts, right? You could be, I forget what we called it, not a product captain, but like a team lead for a specific feature, a specific product feature. And I think that's something that's really cool because it provides that growth opportunity for the SEs on the team, right? If they want to specialize, if they want to lean into a specific area of the offering. But then also to build those relationships, right? So you can be not only the go-to person on the SC side of the house, but across the product org as well. Other things we've done, and this is kind of where it incorporates going back to the relationships too, thinking of like enhancement request lists and like a one list we've used in the past, where you can associate either like feedback from SCs with whether it's new clients requesting specific functionality, or if it's from, you know, the success side of the house, existing clients. You know, it'd be great if this button was moved over here. You know, sometimes it's feature function like that, but sometimes it's really creative, like innovative flow ideas and ways that you would, the different applications and how you use the tool. So having something like a one list like that, where you can associate not only who's asking for it, but maybe put some dollars behind it as well to say, you know, it's maybe a growth opportunity or a new logo, and helping to prioritize according to that.
Well, to that end, what are some ways you can document and share that feedback from the field about other processes, other groups than just product? Brandon, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the organization you're working in and how mature of a process that they have around capturing that. We use sort of internal systems to be able to see what's going to be worked on in the individual sort of development cycles. For us, it's a quarterly process. So we sort of attack that in two ways. One, being able to document it directly to enhancement requests that have gone through that system and having visibility into that and being able to add our context to that as well. Often to get that stuff through, you have to have a reason for it other than this would be nice to have. We can assign that to, well, we lost XYZ deal with X amount of revenue associated because we didn't have this. And being able to put that additional context there helps us really prioritize that through those structured processes and basically get it through the gatekeepers around that as well.
That's great. That's fantastic. And Trey, what do you think?
I completely agree. I mean, the business case justification, it all has to sit. I mean, that's the difference between, as Brandon said, a nice to have and something that's going to really add value to the business and the customers. So, I mean, most everybody's working in SaaS, MRR type of models today. And, retention is a really important metric to track. It's absolutely critical in pre-sales, sales engineering, even post-sales roles. They play a critical role in all of that.
Fantastic. And I have a general question about that, taking it a little step deeper. A few of you have mentioned like through active deal cycles. What about when it's not part of an active deal cycle, but just part of your relationship with a client and they have a business value request? Is that coming through pre-sales in your teams?
Organization that I actually require that. I'm uniquely, able to do that because I manage both the pre-sales and, the professional services aspects. That all comes through pre-sales so that we can put, as Brandon said and Melissa said, so we can put a business value to it and then, negotiate, work with product management to determine whether that's a product release or, just something we're going to leverage off of APIs.
Awesome. Great. Well, now let's look about how we're working with our internal teams. How do you balance the need for internal projects and requests from other departments with your core mission to close deals? So Brandon, what do you think?
It's probably the biggest dilemma that we have in pre-sales, right? We have asked for immediate needs, often demonstrations and prospects that we're having to deal with, as well as also stuff that we know would just improve us as a whole. So something actually I introduced earlier this year was this concept of a pre-sales blackout week. So once a quarter, what we do is we take a week, we manage to get buy-in from the rest of our sales organization to say, we're not going to do any client prep, we're not going to do any demonstrations throughout that week. And then we have our list of projects that ultimately are going to help the organization, help us prep for demos quicker and be more efficient around that. So being able to really focus in and make meaningful progress rather than what I think happens more traditionally in that we've got an extra hour or so on a Friday that we can sort of look at this in a little bit there. So being able to really target what happens outside of the sales cycle in that manner there.
I love that you said that, Brandon. I've done something similar where I've tried to implement no meeting Fridays. So the first Friday of every month is usually, that's my time for internal, maybe it's critical thinking, maybe it's I want to do some research and be current on some events. Maybe it's just catch up on burying myself from the inbox. But I like the blackout week because I find we do, like Wendy, when you asked the question, I was like, oh gosh, the struggle is real, right? Because there's so much value in internal things that we can do to prep and like demo practices, things like that we can do to like knowledge sharing, coffee, lunch and learns, things like that are super, super valuable to the team, but are time intensive. And so, demos have to take priority when, especially if, it's a very qualified deal and, there's a lot of work and hands that are involved in that. So the struggle is real, but I do like that you prioritize setting boundaries with your calendar and like properly allocating time for that, because that is something like we're talking about doing as a way to, again, build relationships with our internal teams. I'm looking at doing some lunch and learns where we can do some knowledge share on some of our new features, things that we demo often, but maybe our implementation folks haven't seen how we demo and how we position it. And so it'll help them grow in that they'll understand what's being positioned with clients. And it's practice for us, to have additional at-bats, going through the talk track and whatnot. So I love the blackout idea, but yeah, the struggle is real, as you can see.
Yeah.
Alon, I was going to say, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the way we managed to get the buy-in from the sales organization is we did it during sales quarter close, because theoretically they should be focusing their effort on closing deals and not the demonstrations to go with other ones. So that was sort of like the week of least resistance, should I say.
Yeah, I'm taking notes myself. We're going to try that.
Yeah, and I think it's really important as leaders that we help our team find and protect that time to get that work accomplished. And Trey, what do you think? What's your approach there?
So we do that on a monthly basis. Our sales cycle tends to be a lot smaller. There's quite a few things that go through without even our knowledge. Our concept is to teach them how to fish so they can feed themselves. But we spend at least a full day once a month, kind of similar to what you're doing, Brandon. When we get close to the end of the month, we shouldn't be really doing a lot of demos. We're engaging with partners, and then we take time to really do some of that cross training, talk about those projects. And a lot of times I put a lot of effort with my leadership team that works for me. I put a lot of effort into them to help them kind of push some of those projects away so that the sales engineers can stay very focused on revenue production. And, they're very integrated with the professional services group. So that's one of the ways that I handle that.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. Well, so let's look at a different side of this. What causes friction between pre-sales and other internal groups? And how can we improve that type of situation when it happens? Melissa, what do you think?
Oh boy, what causes friction? I mean, I think the sales process in general is sometimes, we can be more visionary and forward thinking where, again, the implementation folks might be like, how are we going to do this? Why, this is not how we originally designed it. And, so sometimes there's the visionary versus the practical, like how it's currently built or what flexibility we have to evolve maybe. So I think kind of bringing those mindsets together to create that open mindset of, this is possible and let's figure out how we get there. And that's kind of why I chuckle. Like sometimes, I mean, working at it from anything from a startup to a large, very established corporation, sometimes you're building the plane as you're flying it. And so managing those two, like how we're positioning it versus the tactical kind of makes me chuckle. But I don't know, Trey, Brandon, what are your thoughts?
So I was going to say, you use for me, the absolutely correct word here, visionary, right? I think that's ultimately what our role in pre-sales is to be those visionaries out there. And, we're closest to the market and we're having to adapt constantly. And as a part of that, we're often a step or two ahead of the rest of the organization. So I think both Trey and Melissa touched on it earlier, and one of the other discussion points is that we need to also make sure that we're not just out there visionaries on our own and not bringing the rest of the organization with us. We have to be self-reflective. We have to help the rest of the organization understand what it is we're trying to do. And ultimately what we're trying to do is create successes for our customers, right? So I think having that feedback loop around everything is, how we can reduce that friction with the rest of the organization.
Yeah, Brandon, you absolutely nailed it. I mean, reducing that friction, the key to it is that collaboration with those kind of external teams within your company, whomever you're working for, large, small, established corporation, whatever, putting that together. I mean, that's one of the most important things I think that we do as leaders at any level. And even at the sales engineering level, I mean, there's always multiple parties involved. So it's very, very important that you really lead that collaboration, because we are visionary. Our job is to think outside of the box to get the deal. clear the barriers, remove the technical blockers, and get the deal.
Out of interest to the rest of the panel, how have you found that differ between when we were in person and able to go into offices and now that we're in these virtual environments, or had been for like the past 18 months or so?
Go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we're learning to adjust to reading the room virtually. I was always very keen on body language and how can we come to the same level, right? My dogs might chime in, so if I hop on mute quick, to save our ears. But yeah, I think I'm learning to lean in and have that face-to-face Zoom. Try to avoid Zoom fatigue at the same time, though. But for us, like for me, my approach is like, let's collaborate, right? Like, let's get on a call, whatever fashion works for the group, and let's talk through it. Like, why are we bringing this up? I can think of a recent example where at first I was getting some like technical blockers. But then as we talked through it, they were like, oh, wait, this is a really cool possibility. And, like just talking through the challenges or what can get lost in email or a Slack was really powerful. And then we were able to take the next step to meet with the partner and go through kind of what the logistics would be. And that was actually a really great brainstorming session. And we've got some really cool things ahead that we're going to, now work towards because we were able to get everybody on the same page.
And I think that's a great point, Melissa. I actually think in this virtual world, our communication with each other and with our other stakeholders is even more important than it was before because we don't have those other modes of understanding each other. So I have a question. Have you encountered a time where the pre-sales goals have been out of alignment with the goals of the other internal teams you're working with? And how can you help move past that to get you all working in the same direction? I mean, has that ever happened to you where you weren't in alignment?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective and through various reorgs that we've gone from being within sort of pillars. So actually having very separate goals going up through the various management chains in the organization to then also being under one umbrella, right? And I think when the different parts of the organization are almost working in silos, it becomes really difficult, even when you're in an office, but even more so when you're virtually, that they have their own metrics that they're working towards. And those metrics aren't necessarily always going to be what we have as our metrics, right? And I think the critical piece of that is you have to keep one thing in mind, and that comes down to the customer. And I think a lot of organizations, particularly when they become really large organizations, can often lose sight of that in many ways. And they're really focusing in on what can we do best as our team to what we think is going to be the most important thing for a team or what's best for a team because it was partly read in a textbook, but it loses sight of actually every team's working towards one goal. And that's creating successful customers.
Yeah, it all boils down. Brandon, I completely agree. It all boils down to relationships and in this new normal or this virtual space where we are communicating over a Zoom or what have you. It's absolutely critical that leadership drives that collaboration. Like I spend a ton of time working with my team on that, and not only with them, but pulling others within the organization into that. If we have a partner who has a support issue, sales engineering is probably going to get that call because they're the trusted advisor, even though support did a great job. But we pull those people together and we align those teams. And at the end of the day, that's what serves our customers. I'm very blessed because all the way from the top, that's their mindset as well. I mean, you could have just quoted my CEO. So I'm really lucky, but I have worked in organizations where that's not the case. So I mean, it's so important.
That's great. That's wonderful. Well, so tell us, how much involvement should pre-sales have in these other areas, and how much weight should the pre-sales voice have? Melissa, what do you think?
Ooh, it's a fantastic question because we oftentimes are the front line to customers. So we're hearing either new demands, not demands, that sounds demanding, but it's we're hearing like new requirements, new needs from our clients that we may not have been thinking about, right? Or can bring to the product team or other areas of the team to talk about like how we can enhance what we're currently offering. And so I think it's really important to have a voice, and weighting. I'm not sure if I have a specific number of like how much weight we should have behind it. I think a significant amount because we are so like forward facing, and we're a lot of times building, you know, the visionary, the art of the possible for our customers. So being able to share those insights across the team and get buy-in and agree on like, this is a solid direction we should be going. I think that's really important. I'd be curious, I don't know, Brandon, Trey, if you have a specific weight you think you should throw behind it, or other thoughts too.
Yeah, I think it's been the question almost into the two parts there. 100% pre-sales needs to have involvement, and quite a lot of involvement with the other areas, in my opinion. Exactly as Melissa said, and has been brought up multiple times throughout today, is we are closest to the market, right? We are the ones who are able to adapt when we need to adapt as quickly as possible. So that we have to find a way of bringing that back into the rest of the organization. As far as the weight of that, I think really depends on the size of the organization and the maturity of the organization, the other functions that we have in there. If you have like a really good product team who are the visionaries and are almost like market leaders there, then actually maybe we take a little bit of a step back on that, because they should know what they're doing, and actually we can learn a lot from them and their expertise in that. They're going to help us in the selling. But also, if you're a smaller organization and actually you don't have a quite as mature product organization within your company, then maybe we need to have a bit more of a say in it, because we are then the experts in helping guide our clients, but also helping guide the rest of the organization at the same time.
Wonderful. Well, what are some things that we can consider to ensure a smooth transition to post-sales implementation or to customer success teams? Trey, what do you think?
This is my favorite question. I have spent most of my career really thinking about this. The transitional process from sales engineering to post-sales implementation support, we play an absolutely critical factor there. So for my team, we do things like design is a huge deal. Every opportunity that we have, obviously those above certain scope, we require a design. It's a metric I measure. My team does a great job. They've built templates and all of these things to help us accelerate, some of those things we were talking about in that blackout week you were talking about, Brandon. But that design piece is really, really important. And that's where my, external organizations, if you will, and my channel partners, they lean heavily on that. When we get into more complex things, which we do often, that becomes, requirements, scope of work, project management, all of those pieces, and sales engineering stays right in the middle of it. I actually empower them to actually manage the process, because ultimately they're the ones that made the commitments to be able to solve a given problem or, put a solution together with pieces and parts. So it's their responsibility to see that through to fruition, and it generates some of the best partner relationships we have. So I feel very, very strongly about that, and managing those processes is one of the most important things we do.
Fantastic. And Melissa, what do you think?
Yeah, I would definitely echo what Trey has shared. I'm fortunate to have two perspectives, right? So being the SD boomerang that I am, I've been on the success side of the house. So I've inherited what has been sold by the sales team or pre-sales. And sometimes that's been creative and you're like, okay, now I have to deliver. So instilling that mindfulness in the team as you're selling, as you're designing, like think about how they're going to be using the tool and making sure that you're designing, with that utmost mindfulness of just what you're going to be handing over to the rest of the team. So that's something that I really try to talk to the team about and coach on that piece. But also, I'm fortunate to be a part of our steering committee. So we have a CEP, our client experience playbook steering committee, where we've built out documentation that begins with the sales team. So it begins pre-sales, where as we go through discovery, we've got our format of things that we capture in discovery. As we go through some of our demo meetings, notes and things that are captured there, all the way through design, scoping, implementation, to then ultimately hand over to success as like this living, breathing document of here's the history, everything that we, even if our client started, well, we just introduced it now, but let's say they started in 2017, you'd have that look back history of where they originally started and then what that growth plan was. And then success can roll in and do their success plans and continue to grow them. But having that standard approach and just that single source of truth, or what did we said, singing from the same song sheet, everybody knows what's been covered, what's been shared with the client, and that just makes us look really unified throughout the whole process. So I think that's really important.
I think that's absolutely a great point. And I know I certainly have been in that situation where the client complains and says, we've already given all this information to you. Why do I need to go through? You don't need to go through that process of repeating all of that rich history. So I think that's great. So we'll do one more question before we go to audience Q&A. What are some ways that pre-sales can share information on successes with other teams for our internal learnings?
So I have a fun story on that. There's two things that we currently do. So a new initiative we just rolled out is the idea of pocket stories. And so these are little snippets of success stories that we have with different clients across different industries. And we encourage and kind of challenge the team to be able to, at the drop of a hat, share a pocket story. And this should be like a minute elevator pitch style of like, here's the customer, here's what they were challenged with, and here's how we solved it. But it's a fun new initiative where at the beginning of a meeting, like my VP might just be like, Melissa, tell me a pocket story on Foot Locker, or, insert XYZ client. So that's really fun and it keeps you on your toes. But we also do a WinWire email. So whenever a deal is closed, very similar to the structure of the pocket story, what was the challenge? What did we implement? Where are they going from, what's next kind of on their roadmap, but also like, who is the team that was involved? And so that's a really fun email to get because you can see, what went through the whole sales process, how many people were involved, and you can celebrate. So it's always fun. Our SC team, at least it's a reply all to the team of just like, congrats, this is amazing. And, so fun. I love getting those in the inbox.
That's really fun. I love that. And Brandon, what about you?
Yeah, I actually like that idea of those pocket stories, especially keeping everyone on their toes to make sure they've got one in the bag for when they're asked. But from our perspective, something that I think our senior management implemented, which is really good, is we once a week have just a quick half an hour call with the rest of the organization that works on our product. And it goes from professional services to technology to pre-sales to sales and everything. And within that half an hour, that's really our time to share with the rest of the organization. So whether that's something really cool that we've done to enhance our offering, or we did for a specific client, or whether it's like, yeah, we won this deal because of X, Y, Z. It gives us a chance to have that touch point with the organization and really just share with them, yeah, this is the stuff that's going on. And this is the successes that we've had recently.
Fantastic. All right, well, let's open it up for Q&A. Please feel free to ask a question in the Q&A window. Our first question is, the pre-sales team in our organization was put together only in August. How do we build that trust amongst sales and other teams to engage us in client conversation?
I'd be happy to take a first go at that one. So great question. I think this goes back to even our first question that we talked about, like in building those relationships. Really, your sales team should view you as their right hand or left hand, whatever dominant hand you are, but an extension of them, right? You are the product expert. You are the trusted advisor that's there as part of the deal to build a relationship with the client, to really be consultative, right? And so I really lean into my partners on the sales side and making sure that we have that back and forth where it's a seamless flow, where, you know, my one sales director, she can start asking questions, but know that I'm going to chime in and ask the next couple follow-up questions, because it's such a dance and you have to finesse that relationship and that choreography so you come across as that unified front. But I mean, really, like, your sales team should feel naked without you. Like, that's, I think, the position that we really try to leverage our SCs to be. Like, we are the trusted advisors, we are the product experts, and, you know, ultimately the ones that are going to be there to get us across the finish line. So
That's great. Brandon and or Trey, anything to add?
Yeah, I think, Melissa, what you said about being an extension of the sales team, I think is absolutely key and critical, right? You're there ultimately to make their lives easier, in that you have this in-depth knowledge of the product that they're probably not going to have. And they can really focus in on closing out the deals, finding the business. But as Melissa said, you know, the pre-sales organization is that consultant. That's why a lot of our job titles are called solution consultants, right? We're consulting with the customers. So I think the first place to start is building up that relationship with your sales team. I then think for the rest of the organization, there tends to be a bit of a stigma around organizations that sales tend to missell. People have to deliver it, are unhappy about that, and are told they're just not up to speed on it when sales says the one thing, and so on. So I think, as well as creating those relationships with your salespeople, I think just as important is going and speaking to the people delivering it and asking what their pain points are, right? They're going to have pain points around what transitions from sales into delivery. And I think to build a trust there is you have to listen to them. If you start listening to people and try and find ways to make their lives easier and their jobs easier, that automatically is going to build that trust. And then you become this key person within any organization that's got friends on both sides.
Yeah, I can't, I can't agree more with Brandon and Melissa both. I mean, you know, Melissa, you spoke about the trifecta earlier. I mean, I think of it the same way. You know, I mean, we sit in the triangle, and, you know, on both sides of us, we act as that bridge. I mean, it's critical across all aspects, but especially with your account executives or whatever your sales person or people's title is. That relationship is the single most important thing. I actually bring my account executives into the interview process when I hire new sales engineers. I think that's just fast. If they're not going to mesh right off of the bat, then it's probably not a good hire for my team.
yeah, absolutely on that. One other thought that I had too is I make it a point to have one-on-ones. I don't know how you're going to be structuring your team. We have, like, we're split regionally. I'm aligned. Usually it's like a 3-to-1 ratio. So I have about 3 sales reps that I support. Sometimes that's more, sometimes it's less. But having a one-on-one cadence with the sales directors too helps you build a relationship with them, understand their style. I work with very different, like, polar opposite personalities in very good ways though, because they speak to different industries or different audiences, and they resonate, and it works really well. But we have to find, kind of going back to that, like that choreography, that dance, we have to find our vibe. And, you know, some I need to do a little more work on maybe like the PowerPoint and the prep side versus others, like they want to run and own that piece. I'm just on the demo side. And so leaning into, you know, ways that you complement each other. But I highly recommend one-on-ones, not only with your sales director, but across the org too, like Trey and Brandon, I think we've all said, building those relationships and just solidifying your value, you know, showing up as a respected peer is really, really important.
I think that's very key, right? And again, it's the communication, ensuring that the communication is there and it's flowing. That's fantastic. Well, on the flip side of that, how do you push back in a helpful way, of course, on internal teams who want more time from pre-sales?
I'm happy to jump in first, but I know I've been jumping in a lot.
Go for it.
Okay. So I am very protective of calendars and time. I've been through a really rough burnout in a previous role, and very, very mindful of making sure we have the appropriate time and prep accordingly. So I encourage our team, and I'm a huge advocate for protecting your calendars. We are really firm on having our 3 prep process. So we have 3 stages of meetings that we need to go through before a demo. And usually there's probably more than 3, but we have to hit those at least 3. And so I constantly remind our sales reps, if they're like, can we do a demo on Friday and it's Thursday? I'm like, hang on, that's tomorrow. Do we have time to get those preps in and actually incorporate feedback? And they have really gotten to a point to understand the value in that prep. And sometimes you'll find your finesse again with certain sales directors. We can maybe skip prep 1. Prep 1 can maybe be done via Slack. It doesn't have to be a meeting, but you find that groove. But I think it's important that you set those boundaries and you say, this is how we're going to be successful. If you want me to do a crappy demo, sure, we can do one tomorrow, but it's not going to be good. It's not going to get you the deal. And when you remind them of that, they're like, oh yeah, we want the deal. So yep, let me push for more time. So being firm, set those boundaries, and just again, back to communication, like the reason why I'm setting the boundaries, because I want to deliver a quality demo. I don't want to rush. It's not going to be in our favor. So.
Awesome. One more question from the audience. What have been some of the most game-changing approaches or thought processes that an individual leader has shared with you and that has helped form your mindset as you have grown in this career? Open up to anyone.
So my mentor, for all of the things that she did for me, she used to always tell me when I was still very much, Brandon, you were kind of talking about some of the things of being visionary. When I first started the ProServe organization here at Sangoma, we did a lot of stuff because our product wasn't super mature at the time. So there were some problems that we needed to solve, and we solved them, and we solved them very fast. And the thing that she always told me was, Trey, slow down. And there were times where I just wanted to say, if you tell me to slow down again, but it's important because, you get into that mode where if you get towards that place, Melissa, you talked about burnout. You get towards that place where you're just going, not taking a step back and thinking about the impact. It can have some pretty severe consequences. So I think at the end of the day, really the most important thing for me that really helped me kind of change my path was that it was to remember to slow down and put the focus on, what is the overall view, and delegate down some of those tasks to my managers, to their sales engineers, and moving some of those things forward. But the words that will always stick in my brain are slow down.
I think that's fantastic. And I'll share with you on the Pre-Sales Collective WISE webinar we had on Tuesday, one of the panelists used the phrase relentless prioritization. And I thought that was such great advice. And that's exactly what you just described, Trey. Thank you. So Melissa or Brandon, any other thoughts?
No, I definitely echo Trey. For me, the way that I hear that and the way that I'm implementing it right now is setting boundaries. So prioritizing, setting boundaries. I think I'm super eager, and I can be one that wants to jump in and be Superwoman and try to take on more than I can. And that burns me out in the end. So as much as I struggle with wanting to do it all and do it all wonderfully, you can't. And so slowing down, making sure that you're selecting projects and things that are most, that you can show up most authentically to and bring the greatest value is going to be far greater impact to yourself and your team than trying to do everything like half baked. So yeah, Trey, definitely echo that. And Wendy, I jotted down relentless prioritization because I'm going to put a little sticky note.
I'm gonna put it above my monitor.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree with both Trey and Melissa on that. I think probably one of the most important things that I realized pretty early on in this career is our job is about communication, right? It's about communication in multiple ways, whether that's us being able to explain really complex technical stuff to clients who probably won't have the same level of technical knowledge that we do, and being able to communicate that in an effective manner. But also, I think what's really important, probably one of the most important things in our job, is we have to listen. We can often think that we know exactly what clients are wanting and go, yeah, our product's great because it does this, this, and this. But the client may not be interested in those 3 elements that we think are great, right? We have to listen to the client. We have to really understand what it is they're wanting and probe them, right? We have to probe them with questions to pull that out, because depending on different factors, whether that's cultural factors, whether that's just sort of limitation in people's like buying process and stuff like that, is our job to pull that information out of them so we can make sure that we're hitting everything that they're wanting and what they're wanting to see from our products.
Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate all of the conversation and discussion today. Thank you so much. I'm going to move us into a quick poll here. So if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to let us know how we did today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. I really appreciated it. I learned a lot and I took away some great advice. Thank you so much. I'll give you just a second to answer that poll. Thank you very much for that. And I'd like to thank our sponsor today, Avnio. So Avnio, you can make selling easier and close faster with their Avnio automation solutions. They're Salesforce native and AI powered, helps you automatically answer hundreds of questions in minutes. I don't know about you, but I have never met a pre-sales professional who says they love RFPs. So I love this. I think this is fantastic. I also love this user quote about Avnio. Avnio has helped us improve the time taken to respond to RFIs, RFPs, and security questionnaires by more than 75%. So that's said by Alex, a sales engineering VP. So check them out at avnio.com, and thank you again for sponsoring our discussion today. If you haven't joined our Slack yet, you really should. You can find information about how to join on our website at presalescollective.com/Slack. We have geo channels, industries, help, management topics. Check out the page, introduce yourself and our growing community, and you can stay updated on our upcoming webinars and other events that are coming. And with that, I'd like to thank all of our panelists. I'd like to thank all of you one more time for being a part of the Pre-Sales Collective. Really appreciate your time and discussion today. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.